of you here are lawyers. Some of you could be lawyers, or at least have gone to court. And when the witness is called to give testimony, they don't expect them to say, I think. They speak things they have seen and heard. So as Dixon has told you, I've been here before and I've told you my testimony, how I got saved on the 20th of June in 1972 when I was a young man in secondary school, in Abmali High School. And one of the things that I started doing was to read the Bible. I did not actually go out to read the Bible to understand anything much, but I was reading the Bible mainly because my English was very bad, spoken English especially. And so I read the Bible and the dictionary mainly to learn English. But as I read later on, I got saved on the 20th, and I realized, and I started believing the things I was reading. And one of the verse which I always reminded me is Romans chapter 8, verse 28, which says that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. So from the beginning, I started believing that whatever happened to me, even if I made a mistake, but God can change it if I truly love him. I've seen this happen in my life. Now that we are talking about HIV, I discovered I had got infected sometime back in the 90s. And towards the end of the 90s, I developed AIDS. I am a TB survivor, a cancer survivor, a survivor of other gruesome diseases like meningitis, what the Bagana call mulalama. And then later on, I said, oh, but how do I do this? So when I was in a clinic at Mildmay, I decided to share a testimony with some of my patients, one or two. And later on, I decided to share with a bigger group, talking about the things I've experienced. And I was not telling them what I'd read. Of course, I am a doctor and I'd read a lot of stuff. But I started sharing. People didn't like it. Even I remember being called from the ministry that what I was doing was not ethical. They called it bearing yourself before patients, like undressing in front of patients. Well, I didn't think it that way. I did not follow their guidance. I just explained that, look, I'm a Christian and I'm sharing my testimony. Dr. Ruth and I have been grappling, and yesterday they came from Shenyi, grappling with HIV and how to end it. When we were being sworn in, we were told we should end this disease by 2030, ending the AIDS being a threat to public health. When I zoomed in, I realized it meant stopping new infections, which are now at 37,000 per year, which translates to over 100 people, just over 100 people being infected daily. And among these, about 4,700 babies. And then people who die of AIDS who are about 20,000, which translates about over 50 people dying daily. So these are the things. And then the third thing we need to stop, of course, we need to stop the infections. We need to stop the deaths. But the third one, which I'm going to talk about as sharing my experience, is the issue called stigma. And I'm told we are talking about no more shadows, ending stigma. Now, stigma is that thing that makes one feel ashamed, feel discouraged. When we're reading that verse in the Bible, stigma seems to be coming from what I would call standard operating procedures or guidelines. When you read before the Samaritan came in, there was a priest who saw this person. He must have been looking like a dead person who had been beaten and was lying in front on the road. This was a road where it was known people are hit, like we hear people being hit with kataimbwa in Uganda or pavers. So this person had been hit maybe with a paver or a kataimbwa and had fallen down and he might have looked dead. So this priest most likely was going to, can't hear anything, no sound. Are people hearing me? Hello?
Papa, we can hear you.
Okay, I saw somebody put in the chat that they can't hear. Okay, so what I see, because when you read the Bible, it says when you go get in touch with a dead person, you become contaminated. So this priest must have been following the guidelines. The guidelines are that if you go near this apparently dead person, then you may not be able to minister. The Levite also, I'm sure he was on duty or going for duty. And so the guidelines were that you don't go near a dead person. Then comes in a Samaritan. The Samaritan was, if you read in the Bible, of course, these were again stigmatized people, people who were not looked at as people who were upright, I think, or who were not following the need to following the guidelines in the scriptures. Anyway, I when I was meditating on this, I was wondering, could this Samaritan have gone through a similar experience? A similar experience, which maybe made him act differently. He knew he was going to be contaminated, but he acted out of the box, or without the box, actually. He did not follow the guidelines. But what I think might have motivated him is possibly what we call these days lived experience. Lived experience is when you see somebody going through something, then you may have gone through it, say you were able to say, that person it's called empathy. I think Dr. Ruth would use that word. Empathy is like putting on another person's shoes to be able to be in their position. So this man goes and does what is happening. I remember myself when I was confronting stigma at the beginning of my work at Mild May, even earlier when I started seeing a lot of patients, it was tough guiding them. It was tough talking to them until I decided to speak in the third person. I said, I have gone through this. I have done this. And it changed. It changed. I realized people were now treating me differently. Incidentally, some people didn't thought I was a con man. In fact, one person said, her name is Gondo. I think they said, you doctor, maybe have been paid by drug companies to speak like this so that you encourage us to swallow this medicine. On the other side, some people were thinking that I was unethical, especially my colleagues, the doctors. Then on the other side, my fellow people living with HIV were also not very comfortable with me because I didn't fit in a word. So what I'm trying to say is to overcome, to end stigma, we may have to do things that are not in the standard operating procedures. I see the same in the story of Naaman. Naaman is, I think, in Second Kings chapter 5, the story of Naaman, which all of you know. Naaman was a great man, the Bible says, but he also had a great problem, leprosy. Leprosy is like stigma, like HIV. You don't tell people you have leprosy. You don't tell people, for example, you have HIV. Even if you are saying you are praying for people who are sick, if you are going in front, be prayed before. We in the Pentecostal circle say, you pray for me in the spirit. The spirit lead you to pray for me. You don't tell the person that, look, I have HIV, you pray for me, the way people would tell I have backache or I have headache. So this is stigma associated with HIV. Now it comes with the cost because it means that we cannot, for example, as I mentioned, pray for people with knowledge. I believe in prayer, and one of the reasons why I disclosed publicly is that I wanted to mobilize what I would call massive prayer for me. And I knew that people have limitations because sometimes they may be sleeping or they may be working. So I tried to recruit as many people as possible so that at one point in time, somebody will be praying for me. And I believe this, that people are praying for me, people in America, in China, all over. Of course, there are a few others who may use the information for different reasons, but I'm looking at the prayer part of it. So that is it. That is what I think. But it means confronting what I call standard operating procedure. Like the lady who, the the servant girl who lived in the home of Naaman. I'm sure there is standard operating procedures in that home. You don't talk about leprosy. You don't do this. You don't do this. It's not written in the Bible, but I'm trying to imagine was leprosy being contagious. This girl, when she was brought in the home, she made what we call in medicine spot diagnosis. Spot diagnosis is by looking at a person, maybe the way they are walking. You see somebody limping, you can say maybe he has a broken or a broken limb. He could have a stone in the shoe actually, so they walk when they are limping. But you make what we call a spot diagnosis. So she made a spot diagnosis and she was spot on. She knew this was leprosy. I'm sure they may have warned her that you don't talk like that here. But in my opinion, I think she knew about leprosy. She knew if you walk the clothes of Naaman, she was going to catch leprosy. So she said, no, I'm not going to keep quiet. She spoke. Anyway, long story short, Naaman ended up in Samaria and was healed of leprosy. Never mind that he was given a wrong address. He went to the king instead of going to Elisha. Now, back to the story we have been reading about. The Samaritan had pity on the person. And when I was reading about Jesus, I tried to look up the word compassion and pity, and Jesus was often moved with compassion. See, he found a widow of Nain, he had lost a child, he had compassion on her and healed the man. He found blind men, he had compassion on them and he healed them. He saw crowds who were suffering with diseases and he healed them. I'm wondering why, because he even touched a leper, because this was a no-go area, but Jesus again moved with compassion, he touched a leper. I am thinking, especially we as Christians, because compassion is supposed to be part and parcel of our DNA, since our master himself was always moved with compassion. When you see these figures are now in the public domain. We throw them out. We say people are getting infected. Yesterday I saw somebody was posting that in Sheng where we were commemorating World AIDS Day yesterday. They say that in that place, is it called Kizinda, that in a space of about 500 meters, there are about 168 bars. Bala, where people go to drink. But there are so many other things which happen there that the girls who go to sell beer there, actually, many of them are not paid by the owners of the bars, but they use them as the addresses to sell, to do sex work. So people are saying, so do you, are you surprised that the prevalence is very high? We even tell them, look, let them change. And I could even hear from the speech of the president read by the vice president yesterday. He was advising this people to change. Now, when you zoom in, then you look around, you may find them. What pushes these girls to go to these bars? Is it that they really want to have sex, enjoy having sex with so many people? What is it? What is it? We need to examine in this. And maybe we need to put off the lenses of the priest, put off the lenses of the high priest, I mean the Levite, and try to put on the lenses of the Samaritan and try to go in and go closer and find out. I've done this myself. That time I was in one district in Busoga and found a young girl who was living with HIV. So I took her aside and asked her, Fazira, that's not her real name, but Fazira, what really happened? She said no. And she said she's saved, she's a locally. But she said, I got my menstrual period. I ran to daddy asking for money. My father chased me and he abused me, says, hasn't your mother told you here? Rebuked my mother. Anyway, long story short, he said, again, I didn't know what to do. Then he said, one time I was sitting on a border and I soiled the chair of the border man. And when they got over the border, I said, hey, what have you done? I said, I was so embarrassed. Anyway, long story short, the border gave her some money and she bought some sanitary pads. And they became friends with that border man. And again, long story short, she became her sexual partner and infected her with HIV. So now I was saying, look, now whom do we blame? This girl? Should she change her behavior? The father, the mother, or the border man? I mean, when you try to zoom in and say, whom do we blame for this new infection? Then you realize, maybe I am the one. Maybe I should do something. But what do I do? Do I have to follow the guidelines which are put there? How to not go to bars? I mean, there are so many other things. One of the things that disturbs me most is the babies. When they mentioned that about 4,000 babies are infected with HIV annually, 4,700, which means about 12 babies per day. What do we do? What do we do? I've been challenging my chair again, Dr. Ruth, who is the past president of the Mothers Union, that maybe God brought her in at this time for a reason. That we stop mother-to-child transmission. We stop during her tenure as chair. But I'm just trying to throw this, but I'm talking to all of us, talking to myself also. How do we get out of the shadows? How do we end stigma associated with HIV? I know you're talking about aging gracefully, maybe referring to how myself have lived. I am now 72. That picture which you are seeing is a bit misleading. I don't look so smooth on my face. That picture is when I send the real picture, they don't want to use it. They use this one. You know people with pictures. But anyway, I look older than that. But I also like it anyway, to be honest. But what I'm saying is, how do we now get rid of this? Then I went back to my story again of the servant girl. That this girl actually had some knowledge. She knew in some area, in where they had picked her from, there was a man who could cure leprosy. He knew this is knowledge. Incidentally, if you follow the story, the king of Syria wrote a letter to the king of Samaria, the king of in Israel. This king, again, apparently didn't know what this girl knew. He tore his clothes. So you can be a big person with big titles, but you are ignorant. This lady was more knowledgeable. Now, it's very painful. They don't give us her name, but she was knowledgeable. And then I remembered in our HIV work, we say that people in Uganda, especially those who stigmatize others or who experience stigma, do not have what we call comprehensive knowledge of HIV, what causes it, how it affects the body, what can be done to help this kind of thing, and so on and so forth. Knowledge. I struggle with stigma, brethren. Whenever I get a person, a religious person, I try to ask them, and I tell them, look, for example, when I get a Muslim, I tell them, we have a very good ART program in Kibudi, and I even know the doctors. Can I send you there? Before I finish, they say, no, can't send me there. Everybody knows me there. So I send them to Mengo instead, or to Rubaga. Incidentally, when I get a person from Mengo, you know what I'm talking about, a man of the cloth, or a religious person, or even a prominent Christian from Mengo, or from those ends. He said, no, I can't go there. So I send them to Kibudi. So it is category for me. It's tough. And then Nehemiah, I think it is in the book of Hosea chapter 4, verse 6, where it says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. Because of lack of knowledge. I know it's talk about the knowledge of God, but knowledge is knowledge. If you don't know the road to Kampala, you can't get there anyway, even if you are a bishop or a doctor or a big person. You must know. So knowledge. How do we overcome stigma? How do we get out of the shadows? All of you have various experiences. I know a friend who told me the other day, my singer is sick with this problem, but we can't talk about it openly. So how do I help her? The other day during the COVID-19 experience, you know, a neighbor called me, say, doctor, we have a friend came to visit us, but he has run out of medicine. Say, which medicine? No, this medicine for AIDS. Hey, I said, how do we help? I said, can you send me a picture of the bottle? Quickly he sent it to me. Yeah, I said, Anyway, long story short, I discovered my neighbor himself was living with HIV, but he has never told me. That's one of the good things I got out of COVID. At least I know I have a neighbor who is like me, so we can support each other. But you see, stigma, it makes you feel ashamed, you feel embarrassed. But to get out of it, I think one of the things that has helped me is to turn it into a testimony. By turning it into a testimony, it helps me to talk about things that I've seen, things that I've experienced, and this has liberated me. Honestly, to be honest, you should have seen me in 1999 or even 1994 when I just lost my wife. I was so depressed, severe depression, where I was almost on the verge of being suicidal. But now, when you see me now, I don't even dream about death. I actually don't, because I know I'll die. I don't even think about it too much, because I know one day I'll die, so I don't, why should I waste time think about it? But stigma is making the the over 1.5 million people living with HIV. Many of them are in our churches, by the way. Many of them are in our communities. They cannot be able to do this. Incidentally, it is also not only HIV. I'm seeing it also with other diseases. I saw it with COVID. I see it with the cancer these days. Somebody tells you, hey, you know, brother so and so has cancer, but don't tell people. Don't tell people. So why are they saying this? It's because stigma is associated. This is associated with death. When you say you have HIV, somebody say, oh, mama, I'm food dead. Or you have cancer, the people start breaking down and they say, oh, I'm going to die. Never mind the Christians, but okay, for us Christians, we say, when we die, we go home. So why aren't we? But apparently, most of us are not homesick. We don't want to go home yet. We still have a lot of things here. Maybe I'm not married. I've just got married. Even as we're old, I've just started enjoying my grandchildren. Nobody wants to die, apparently. It looks. But anyway, on a more serious note, we need to invest in this. But I'm trying to argue that the way to overcome stigma associated with anything is look within. And as I suggested, it's possible that this good Samaritan or the Samaritan, he could be described as a rich Samaritan from the way he behaved. He also had some money, so he could have been a rich Samaritan, but also was a good one. Of course, if you don't have money, you cannot give somebody a blank check that say, you treat, when I come back, I'll pay even whatever you have spent more. That's a blank check. Give that to Uganda and he'll pay it through the nose. But he did that, and so he did it. But could it be possible that he had gone through a similar experience? I want to challenge you, all of you, you have gone through some painful experiences, not HIV necessarily, but all of you have what I would call painful experiences. How do you learn from them? The suffering you have gone through. But you are not the only one. How do you now turn this suffering into ministry? How do you turn the difficult marriage you have to endure into ministry? Because there are a lot of people who are even going through worse situations. We used to talk about people who carried their problems to the market, and they said, you have problems, you put them in bags, in packets, and bring them. So people carried problems. So this man carried his pickup full of problems, and when he reached there, he found had carried pickups of problems, lorry full. He decided to carry back his problem because he did not want to mix his problem with the other one. You think you are suffering. There are people who are going through one situation. But how do you turn this into an experience that can be helped to help others? I don't have a lot of time, I believe. I don't know. This fellowship goes on for about up to I'm told. And I've talked for maybe over 20 minutes, maybe. And I want to bring it towards the end. But I want to say, look, God wants us to be helpful. People in problems. You could look, when you look at HIV, you could look at these new infections. When you look at a new infection, I know you are looking at homosexuals, you are looking at these women I've talked about who go and sell sex in bars, you're looking about men who sleep about. But you can pick any, you can pick on those ones. Many of you may have testimonies, may have been there. Some of you could identify that you have been in some of those. But why don't you pick the low-lying fruit like the babies who have done none of the above, actually? Many of these children, get infected in their mother's womb, and they don't know anything about doing anything, whether good or bad, they get infected. A lot of them struggle when we teach them, tell them that, look, these are living with HIV. Many of them are living very miserable lives. A few have come out. The other day when I was in Busheng, I went on a radio program and I was talking Luganda, by the way, because but they followed me. When I finished, I got so many calls. Among the calls I got was a young man who called me. He's now about 40, he says. But he said he met me in Mildmay, and he told me that, look, the way you talk to us, like you're one of us, is actually what changed me. He went on to study. Now he's doing his bachelor's. He did the diploma in what in primary education. He found another young lady also living with HIV. They got married. I asked him, "Are you saved?" He said, "Yes, we are saved. We go to church." We got married, and they have 3 HIV negative children. Then I was asking him, "How did you manage?" And she said, when they asked us to go and test, we went and tested. Indeed, we didn't test, but we told them we have tested and showed them the negative. So they told lies anyway, but I could understand, because the stigma there is so palpable, if I may say. They can even refuse to aid you if you tell them that you have HIV, or they can make all sorts of work. But these people are two. They were both born with HIV. They are living together. They have produced 3 negative children. They have challenges like any other young people have in Uganda, but really you can see that a testimony. Now, she said, of course, there are many other things, but she says one of the things that helped me, this person, was my testimony, how I talked to them the way. Now, when I was talking, I didn't know this. I was just trying to come up with a model of care of using lived experience. And as I told you, it caused me a rebuke from the ministry. And I understood them. But I also thought this was God urging me. People say something, told me, I know it was the Holy Spirit telling me that you use this lived experience to help others. But as I finish, really, to be honest, I think the person I've helped most is myself. By talking to people the way I'm talking to you, it's like I'm talking to myself every day, telling myself, Stephen, there is a future. And I started talking to myself. I remember when my daughter, who is now married and with 2 children, was only about 10 years. And I was talking to myself that, look, Stephen, if you trust God and follow this medicine, you'll be able to attend this girl's introduction, wedding, graduation. All those things have happened. So I think I've helped myself most. I'm telling you that if you're going through challenging situations, the best way to go through them, some of them stigmatizing situations, some of them you can't talk about in public or with any person, but God knows them in any case. Turn these, what I call lemon experiences, into lemonade, which can be a blessing to others. I beg to stop here, but I want to end by saying that by trusting God and doing what God has revealed, I should have mentioned Deuteronomy 29:29, which is one of my other favorite verse. It says that secret things belong to God, but the things that God has revealed belong to us and to our children. No, there are a lot of stuff we don't know about HIV, actually. But there's a lot that we know. Let's put this in practice. The medicines, the prayer, the support, even just putting an arm around somebody or holding somebody's hand. You may not say anything. Sometimes let me tell you what I did. Sometimes I would join my people who broke down and cried. I didn't follow the counseling guidelines because I'm not a counselor. One time, a lady broke down, and without realizing, I joined her. This is in a clinic. We cried together. Then I told her, "You go and wash the face." There we washed our faces. We composed ourselves, and then that life went on. May not have been the right thing to do, but these are things that I think we need to do. It's empathy. You may not copy what I did, but do something. do something. Jesus, whenever he was moved with compassion, he did something. The Good Samaritan, when he moved with compassion, he did something. The servant girl who was in Naaman's, when he was moved with compassion, seeing a great man suffering with a great problem, she did something. I challenge each one of you, do something. Sometimes the only thing many people have done is criticize what some of us have done. Well, that's also doing something, but why don't you do something to end HIV-related stigma? I thank you. Over to you, Dixon and Tim.
Wow, thank you so much, Doctor. This